وسهلا بكل الذين ينضموا للاستماع إلى راديو بلدي أول راديو عربي أمريكي ويعنى بقضايا العرب في المهجر. برامجنا في راديو بلدي كل يوم جمعة من 8 وحتى 9 صباحا مع ليلى الحسيني في بث حي ومباشر عبر wnzk راديو 690 AM. صباح الخير بلدي، صباح الخير لكل مستمعينا.
Welcome to Radio Baladi, the first Arab, Middle Eastern, and American simulcast radio show. Radio Baladi is broadcast every Friday morning on WNZK 690 AM from 8 until 9 Eastern Time on Good Morning Michigan with Layla Al-Husseini. Our call-in number 248-557-3300. And now, stay tuned for the best radio talk show on Arab and American issues with your host, Layla Al-Husseini.
I am Atef Abdel Gawad. Join me the first Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be discussing some of the most important issues and events in the Middle East live on America's Voice of the Arabs. WNZK 690 AM and wdmv 700 AM.
Stay tuned to Radio Baladi. We weren't able to contact Dr. Jawad, but Ray Hanania is going to guest host in this place. So here's Ray Hanania.
Hey, thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. Welcome back to Detroit, right? Yeah, I love Detroit. I can't believe I've been gone. I've been so darn busy working. This is Ray Hanania, and usually I've been here on Fridays, but we're sitting in for Dr. Jawad because he was not able to make it this morning. But that's okay. He's such a good guy, and I know he tries his best to sit there and help Layla Al-Husseini, the host of U.S. Arab Radio, which is here Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 o'clock every day, the only morning Arab radio show, American Arab radio show in the United States. And, of course, I love hosting radio on her show. I just wish I could do it more. I'm so busy. I got hired by the Arab News in Saudi Arabia, so I write a column every week in the Arab News at arabnews.com. Every Thursday, talking about Middle East issues and Detroit Arab American and Muslim issues too. And we were going to talk a little bit, I guess, about Donald Trump and his election. I told you folks he was going to win. Nobody wanted to believe me. Remember last summer when I said that? I said he was going to win. But I'm telling the issue for me, and I think that this is an issue we can talk about, if you want, at 248-557-3300 if you want to call in a little later, is that, here we have the mainstream American news media that hates Arabs. The mainstream American news media hates Muslims. The mainstream American media hates people from the Middle East. They libel us. They slander us. They disparage us. And they tell us that Trump hates us. Why would you believe them? I'm not going to believe them. I'm going to do my own. And I'll read up all about Donald Trump. And I read up about this guy. And I don't believe he really hates us. I think he's like any politician has said some dumb stuff, which I think can be wrong. But I'll tell you what, is that worse than what the media has done to us? So that was my column this week in the Arab News on Thursday. It was called Fake News versus Biased News in the U.S. Political System. And it's all about how fake news dominates the American news media and how they lie about us and they twist everything to benefit them. Meanwhile, we're not allowed to criticize a place, many different sacred cows like Israel. I'm not allowed to criticize Israel, yet Israel has killed so many Americans, and the fake news, American news system doesn't want to report it. So how do you sit there and be angry? I'm really amazed at how Arabs and Muslims around the country have organized against Trump, but never did anything to organize against the racism and the bigotry of the American news media in this country. How is that? We're going to talk about that. Why is he worse than the media that has beaten us over the head all over? Mike is the producer, so if you're going to call, just check in at 248-557-3300. But, Mike, I believe we have somebody on the line, correct?
Yes,
Annie?
we have Hani and Dr. Jawad called in as well.
Oh, Dr. Jawad called in. Great. Hey, Dr. Jawad.
Yes, hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
I was like a Palestinian refugee looking for a home. So I was about to take your place there.
Okay, are we on the air now?
Yes, we are.
Okay, because I understand I was going to present the
That's
show
all right,
on a different topic. Who is talking to me now?
This is Ray Hanania. And we have Hani on the line also, Dr.
Yes,
Jawad.
right.
How are you?
Ray, why don't you go ahead and proceed with your discussion? Because, as you know, we were planning to discuss the election results and how they impact the Arab American community.
Yes, that's what we're going to talk about. Exactly. That's still the same thing. I just think that that Arabs and Muslims get so upset about Trump, but they don't do anything about the real threat in this country, which is the news media. They hate us. They define us as terrorists, murderers, Arabs on TV, in movies, and we need to do something about it.
Right. But Ray, I wanted to see how you evaluate the going back to the election results. Mr. Trump won in Michigan. Any indication how the Arab community voted in the state?
Yes. When you look at the numbers, Dr. Jawad, it's clear there was a split in the Arab community, and there was a difference between the Arab community and the Muslim community. Most Muslims in the United States are not Arab. 78% of Muslims in this country are actually Pakistani, Indian, Asian. They're not Arab. Only about 22% of Muslims are actually Arab. And as you know, in Detroit, they have a huge Middle East community of Christian Arabs and non-Arab Christians from the Middle East, like Chaldeans. They're a huge voice. And I think the news media made a major mistake by not recognizing, and they do this all the time, they take us for granted. They didn't recognize the complexity of the Arab community. For the media, the Arab community is just a bunch of terrorists. But to you and me, we know that the Arab community is very complex, very educated, very involved, don't you think?
Absolutely, and that takes me to another question: the diversity of the Arab community, the complexity of the Arab community, not just in Michigan but in the U.S. generally. Does it parallel the divisions, I should say, that we see in the Middle East, in the motherland? And so if that's the case, how can you and me hope to have a voting bloc, a strong voting bloc in America?
Yeah, that's a good question, Dr. Jawad, because, it's true. Most Arabs that immigrate to this country, we've come here, legally we've come here, by the way. When they talk about illegal immigrants, they're not talking about Arabs. The majority of Arabs have come here legally. We did it the proper way, but we bring our baggage of Middle East politics with us. We're here physically, but mentally we're still back home. So we live our lives as if we were living in the streets of Aleppo today, which is under siege, by Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. We live as if we were under occupation, in Palestine. we live as if we're being brutalized, in Tahrir Square in Cairo. So instead of living here, I think a small percentage of us do, but the majority of us, we should be living here as Americans, proud of our Arab and Muslim heritage, but we should get involved more in the American system, including voting. It was clear to me that Michigan was going to vote for Trump. Every call that I made, and I don't know how the news media missed this, because, Michigan was a very big Democratic state, and Democrats always win Michigan by as much as 5 to 8% of the vote. That's their margin. This time, a Republican won by a small margin, but when it showed how close it was, I knew right away that Hillary Clinton had a major problem in Michigan. She couldn't get the same support that other past Democrats have gotten, like Obama and Clinton.
But Ray, what was exactly more appealing about Mr. Trump in a democratic state, traditionally democratic state?
Sure. You know what Trump's appeal is to most, Arabs, I think, that voted for him? That he is tough, that he will stand up to extremism, that he will stand up to terrorism, and that he's not a hypocrite. That's the biggest problem with the Democrats. They always say how much they support peace and justice, how they support Palestinian rights, how they support, the rights of Arabs, the Arab Spring. But in truth, the Democrats have not really supported us at all. They talk, but they've lied. Under Democratic administrations, 19 states, mostly Democrats, passed legislation this past year that punishes any American who criticizes the state of Israel. The state of Illinois just passed that law this past year that says that if I boycott the state of Israel, supporting the BDS movement, and I criticize the West Bank illegal settlements, that I will be denied access to pension funding for my organization, state grants, funds that are given to everybody else, but they won't be given to my group because I criticize Israel. That is under a Democratic administration. I think a lot of Christian and secular Muslims, Christian Arabs and secular Muslims, I think they saw through the hypocrisy of the Democratic, people and Hillary Clinton's campaign. There was more Palestinians killed under Barack Obama, in his first 6 years in office, almost nearly identical to the number of Palestinians killed during the entire 8 years of George W. Bush.
Excuse me, Ray.
Yeah, Ray.
Hello?
Do we have Mr. Hani Bawardi with us?
Yes, we do.
Yes,
yeah.
I think Hanny's on the line. Hi, Hanny.
He
Hi.
is on the line.
Ray,
Yeah.
if I
Okay.
can
Well,
jump in.
let's.
Go ahead.
I want to go back to the issue of the Jewish vote and support for Israel under Mr. Trump. But let me just inquire from Dr. Hani Bawardi whether, again, about going back to the election results, whether there is any specific trend where we can say Arab American or the Arab American community vote Republican or Democrat, one way or the other, not just in Michigan, but generally.
I can barely hear you, Dr. Jawad, but I think I get the gist of your question. I'd like to go back to Ray's comments. Just on your last point here about,
Sure.
governors opposing to the BDS movement on a gubernatorial level. One of Donald Trump's recent appointments is Nikki Haley, the governor of South Carolina, who became the United States ambassador to the UN, permanent ambassador to the UN. And she built her reputation on a couple of things. She's an anti-immigrant, although she's a daughter of immigrants. And she also passed a law in South Carolina which sort of criminalized supporting BDS herself. So you have all the markings. We might parse our words concerning, the phrase "we," quote unquote. I think we do well to sort of work out who we are to begin with. But I also feel pressed to also comment on your earlier remarks concerning Trump. I don't want us to absolve Trump just yet. 3 of his appointments, 4 so far, or 5 as a matter of fact, Steve Bannon, Michael Flynn, and K.C. McFarland. These are respectively, basically loudmouth who became counsel to the president. He made his views on Muslims and Arabs very clear in the past. He's a xenophobe. Michael Flynn, who was fired for incompetence, is now National Security Advisor.
But Hani, could I think you make a good point, Hani, but let's talk about this point. You could go through and name a lot of people that Trump has named that we don't like. I agree with you.
He didn't name them, he appointed them. And the
I get that. I'm saying that he could appoint them, but how does that make him worse than Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton? Barack Obama appointed Susan Rice and Samantha Power at the United Nations, and they vetoed every resolution against the Palestinians. So how is
You mentioned killing of Palestinians under the Obama administration. You compared that to the Bush administration. These are like many layers we have to peel off as, pundits one at a time and parse the words. But in general, there was a third destruction of Palestinian society on Bush's watch in 2003. We should keep in mind. That's when Sharon plowed into the West Bank. That was actually a byproduct of the war on terror. He had covered by the Bush administration, and Colin Powell was powerless to do anything about it, if he wanted to do anything at all. During the reign of Obama, you didn't have the Israelis bombing the heck out of Gaza like they did towards the end of the Bush administration.
5,000 Palestinians were killed in Gaza during Bush's 8 years in office, and 4,100 Palestinians were killed during the first 6.5 years of Obama being president in Gaza.
I don't know where the figures came from. Either way, your point is well taken that we don't have a voice in the White House. That I can agree with you on. But and you made the comparison, or pointed out that we should not conflate Arabs and Muslims. It's true. So the Palestinian cause has been a sort of rallying call for Arab American activism for 80 years or so. We don't have a coherent history of that in order to assess where we are at present in terms of political participation. We still have no voice nationally in terms of influencing the direction of foreign policy. There are many reasons for that. Numbers speak volumes. So let me remind you of something here, our listeners, that is, towards the end of the first term by the Bush W administration, he was beginning to pay attention to Muslim voters. He actually met with them just days before 9/11. You remember the election was very, very close with Gore. And he asked them for their support. He won Florida, which swung the election in his favor by a few hundred votes. Muslim leaders actually said, yes, we will vote for you if you stop using secret evidence in court proceedings against Muslims. We also forget that was basically a part of the omnibus anti-terrorism bill of 1996, which was a result of the Oklahoma City bombing. which was perpetrated by a militia
and American
groups.
Right.
Americans, yes, Anglos with actually Michigan militia connections. And he agreed.
Yeah, but Dr. Bawardi, I think that the problem is bigger than that. I think that's you're making the mistake, and I don't mean to be critical. I'm very familiar with your work, and I respect a lot of what you do. So this is not personal at all. I disagree with this argument that you're making that somehow, the bigger argument, you know, we can go into the details, but the bigger argument that you're making somehow that Trump is worse for us than Hillary Clinton.
I haven't made that argument yet, actually.
I think that's what it comes down to. That was our choice. Do I vote for Hillary Clinton or do I vote for Trump? Why would somebody vote for Hillary Clinton?
Okay, let's talk about Trump's appointments for a second here. You don't have anything that resembles this. You have a committed Christian Zionist who is now National Security Advisor, which synthesizes the information.
Yeah, but we've always had Zionists in even the Obama administration. What's the difference? I guess I'm saying that many American Arabs, and I'm not Muslim, you know, maybe the Muslim community is different. Most of them are not Arab. You know, so I know that Asian, Indians, and Pakistanis have been involved in American politics far more than Arab Muslims and Arab Christians. But as an Arab American, Hillary Clinton has not been very good to me, and neither has Barack Obama. His empty words don't mean it.
Neither has had the reason to be kind to us anyway. If I criticize Donald Trump, it does not make me a supporter of Obama's policies in the Middle East. As a matter of fact,
well, it does.
He dropped this like
in a choice between two people. It does.
I'm sorry?
I think it does make you a supporter of Obama and Hillary because in American politics we only have a choice. It's either going to be Trump or it's going to be Hillary.
If I have a voice on your program, Ray, I am telling you that I'm not a fan of Obama's policies on the Middle East, which were, you know, non-existent for the most part, at least in the second administration. Back to Donald Trump, which you voiced your opinion about, you know, why do we take him with a grain of salt, or why don't we support him? You knew he was going to win, etc., etc. The closest people to him who will design the broad lines of U.S. foreign policy are rabid, anti-Muslim, anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab.
And they're no different. And I'm saying, listen, I think you make a good point. He does have some people around him I don't like. But how does that make him different than Obama or Clinton? Why is he different? Why do you hold up
let me answer that.
feet to the fire but not Clinton?
Let me answer that. Yeah, the new kind of danger we're facing here, Ray, is that xenophobia and jingoism. Jingoism is a mixture of nationalism and racism, is becoming normalized. It's normative talk now to say the blurred things about Muslims. His rallies became palpably anti-Muslim, festivals for the most part.
I disagree.
And now you have hints of fascism creeping in.
Okay, I have a question for Ray, my friend Ray. How do you expect Mr. Trump to be any better for the Arab American community or for the Arabs in the Middle East in general?
One of Trump's best friends was Farouk Shami, who I interviewed, a Muslim American Palestinian businessman. Worked with him for 20 years, was close to him, and spoke very highly of him. And I understand that, you know, in politics, people change and their rhetoric changes, but Trump has no political history. Trump is really a big question mark.
Indeed, he does.
Well, he has some positions as a former Democrat who recently became a Republican, very similar to Ronald Reagan. And, you know, I think that Trump is a bigger question mark, and I think that politics is about taking a risk. And I think there's a better chance of getting what we want under a Trump than under a Clinton. And I think most Arabs, Christians, and secular Muslims believe that. I think they see Trump
is a positive, passive president who likes his job, but he basically sucks at it. He's already running away from briefings. He is becoming like a poor version of Ronald Reagan at best, and the people around him probably wreak havoc.
We're only 2 weeks into.
You have to look at Steve Bannon, Michael Flynn, Katie McFarland, and Nikki Haley, and just look at what they've been saying about immigration, Muslims, the Middle East, etc. Those people, although they have also engaged in anti-Semitism on occasions, they treat Israel as an instrument of God. And frankly, to distribute blame, Jewish Americans were happy to have this support by the American Christian fringe to the right until they become alarmed by it. Now, I mean, the cows have come home, and now we have in the White House occupying positions of counselors to the president, national security advisor, deputy national security advisor, respectively, for Bannon, Flynn, and McFarland, who will tell the president what he should and should not do. And if Trump is having them there as tokens, then why these choices, frankly, unless they actually reflect his sentiments towards the Middle East and Islam. And he himself expressed that in the past. I mean, he does not offer anything new in terms of how to approach the Arab-Israeli conflict, or aside from bombing the heck out of ISIS, to use his own words, what else is there? Iraq was destroyed, so was Syria. And the Obama administration is not faultless. But remember, it was during a Republican administration that, the strategic decision was made to undo the government of Iraq and its army and its institutions, which finally spilled into Syria.
I think this topic needs to be, I think this topic that we're talking about is very important, and obviously needs more than 1 hour or half hour. Dr. Gawad, I think that the radio is saying we need to just take a quick break, huh? Why don't we do that?
Right. Okay, let's go ahead with a break.
Imagine if your beautiful children, family, friends, and the home that you've worked so hard to build was threatened, and all you could do was pick up what you could hold in your hands and flee for your life along a dangerous, untraveled road to a displacement camp far from home. Over 1 million people in Mosul are leaving behind everything in hopes of escaping with their lives. These families are in desperate need of help just to survive another day. For $150, you can provide a fleeing family with a relief package that includes blankets, food, water, and a hygiene kit. And for only $35, you can provide one individual with a relief package. Join Life for Relief and Development's effort that's already on the ground to face the crisis in Mosul and provide hope during times of difficulty. Please act now and donate today.
It's never too early to get your child on the right track. From their first words to first grade, Dreamy Children's Center in Troy works closely with parents to provide an experience that goes beyond early education. The highly qualified and experienced staff use a variety of programs that can help nurture important personality traits like responsibility, independence, problem-solving, motivation, and respect. They also have educational programs ranging from preschooling for infants, toddlers, transitional toddlers, and pre-K to Montessori-approved programs and bilingual curriculums for young children. They're open from 6 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., can provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner with snacks in between, and can also arrange for after-school pickup. Dreamy Children's Center in Troy is located at 37373 DeQuinder, just above 16 Mile Road, and can be found on Facebook at Dreamy Children's Center. Ask about the free preschool program. Call today, 248-680-9170, 248-680-9170.
Are you going to start a restaurant or grocery store soon? Do you need floor plans and designs? Call Naji Abood at 734-744-9796. Do you want to buy kitchen and restaurant equipment at discount prices? Call Naji Abood now, 734-744-9796. New Concept Products and Design, the trademark of kitchen equipment. 5% discount on all purchases of $75,000 or more. New Concept Products and Design, new location, 31185 Schoolcraft in Livonia. Learn more at www.newconceptproducts.com. Call Naji Abood, 734-744-9796.
ZIYAD brand. Quality products from our family to yours. ZIYAD Brothers Importing offers the finest quality products, including brands like Sultan, Kraft, Nestle, Hook, Rico Picon, Donna, and many more. Ask your retailer to carry these fine products because you deserve the very best. For more information, visit our website at www.ziyad.com. That's www.ziyad.com. ZIYAD, quality products from our family to yours.
A car accident can change your life in an instant. As a result of a car accident, you may become unemployed. As a result of a car accident, you may need a lot of medical treatment. People think that insurance companies are on their side. Why? Because they're giving them one or two benefits. Are they giving them all the benefits they deserve? How would one know unless you consult with an attorney? Call the law offices of Jumana Kiruz at 248-557-3645. 248-557-3645.
I am Atef Abdel Gawad. Join me the first Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be discussing some of the most important issues and events in the Middle East live on America's Voice of the Arabs. WNZK 690 AM and wdmv 700 AM.
The American presidential elections, Mr. Trump and the Arab Americans in the U.S., where they stand. With us to discuss the issue, Ray Hanania, a journalist, Dr. Hani Bawardi, professor at the University of Michigan. One of the worst fears about Mr. Trump's rise to power is his impact worldwide, not just in the U.S., on the rise of the extreme right-wing groups, nationalist groups in Europe and elsewhere. And I would like to get your take, both my guests, and let's start with Ray Hanania, on how the rise of the extreme right movement in Europe and elsewhere could help the Arabs in general.
Well, listen, I take a very unorthodox view towards American politics. I've covered it for 40 years, and I understand sometimes we're given blinders that are put on our eyes, and we only see certain things. And I can understand how we can look at, Donald Trump and just base it on some of his appointments, and, assess him as being that he's going to be negative towards us. But I also think that we have to look at what's happened, the reality of what's taken place over the last 8 and 16 years. And sweet talk from President Obama, his failed happy talk, I think is something that we need to stay away from. I think that Arabs and secular Muslims, and I'm talking about Arab Muslims, I'm not talking about non-Arab Muslims, I'm talking about Arabs coming together as Arabs, Christian and Muslim, as a movement, because we don't exist today. And we need to lobby President Trump. Instead of confronting him, we need to lobby him, we need to speak to him, We need to do it as a person who is president and respect him. We can disagree with his, decisions, but I think that that's our failure, that we allow our emotion to drive us and forget the really important fact that over the last 16 years, the real threat to Arab rights has come from American politicians who have run this country and from a news media that has tried to influence that political system. And I think we can't ignore that. I think that's a big battle, and it's not easy to do. But I think we have to approach Donald Trump and reason with him and meet with him, not protest, not argue, because he has reasoned with us in the past. He's had many good relations with American Muslims and American Arabs. And I think we should not shut that door just because we don't like some of his appointments.
Dr. Bawardi.
Yeah, this is something we can talk about, Ray. Granted, we have to be engaged in the political process. First, we have to understand what our history has been with participating in the political process, or whether our voice was actually required or sought by politicians. We have to look at Arab Americans within a U.S. larger social context. When Donald Trump takes a very hostile stance from immigrants in general, we're victims. When Donald Trump rolls the clock back on social programs, that actually touches the lives of Arab Americans. I agree with you, we're not a monolith, of course. Arab Americans are very unique in that we came in two distinct ways, and we are separated by like 40 or 50 years of immigration restrictions, really severe immigration restrictions. So the first wave were mostly Christians. Now they're woven into the fabric of this country, and they're indistinguishable from the general population. You have Republicans among them and Democrats. These are third and fourth generation now. Then you have the post-1965 immigrants who are still forging their lives. You mentioned a large presence in Dearborn, Michigan. They're at the early stage of their immigration, and they're being replenished by even newer immigrants from Iraq and now Syria. So we are still building our home base. I agree with you completely. We have to keep educating the American public, this is a fine opportunity to do just that. In terms of the political process, we unfortunately have grown accustomed to disappointments. The United States has one viewpoint when it comes to the Middle East, it seems, especially the core issue there, which at least until recently was a core issue, the Arab-Israeli conflict. No one deviates from that line. And when Reagan administration tried and the Bush administration tried, they were immediately labeled anti-Semitic and backed down. Even Reagan himself, when he sold AWACS planes to Saudi Arabia, was forced to kind of back down. So how can we influence Trump's opinion or the political process is a large question. I propose that we need to build bridges with our natural allies. Frankly, the natural allies tip towards, the Democratic side and the disadvantaged and minorities. These are our home base, not Republicans who are well-to-do, although we are well represented, by the way, on the, high-income bracket in this country. We did generationally, at least early immigrants did very well for themselves. So our interests are diverse, if I might say our, and I agree with you that we should distinguish between Muslim Americans and Arab Americans in terms of at least writing ourselves into the narrative as Arab Americans, regardless of religion. Our history is chaotic. Arab American studies is at present on a road from nowhere to nowhere, to be honest with you, tipping heavily towards gender issues, very little attention to historiography and biographies. I ask my students about their heroes from Arab American life, and they struggle to give me a single name. And the names of like Edward Said or much less Habib Katibah from the past, or Philip Hipti or Fuad Shatara, are completely unknown to them now. They come up with, in Dearborn, Iranian clergy or their parents as their heroes. So we're dropping the ball. The other thing I'd like to propose, if I might, very quickly, is that we're undergoing a period of regression now as Arab Americans. That's a big topic we need to discuss at some point on its own terms. Leadership is in regression. Fine organizations, civil rights organizations that once served to kind of express our collective, sentiments are imploding, frankly, and Muslim Americans are stepping to fill the gap. So the American public is left wondering who's who. I mean, between the oil embargo and the Iranian crisis, they never recovered from conflating Arabs and Muslims. And even on a elementary or high school level, I attended the college board's conference on AP, advanced placement classes in high schools, and I was actually shocked by what I saw, although I had a very good inclination as to what is being taught on elementary school and high school levels about the Middle East. Texas influences the entire curriculum in the country because it's a large school district. And these, Hebrew mythology is taught as settled history, and political messages are couched in very poor historical lessons about the region, that the conflict is ancient, and et cetera, et cetera. Well,
I agree with you, Hani, that we need to, and I think most of what you said, I agree with you 100, almost entirely. I think that we really do need to take back our own, identity. As you say, we're kind of just being melted into everything, and Arabs are being, I think, erased. But I just want to go back to the issue on immigration. I think that's a good topic to explore this. I don't think that the issues of immigration that are being discussed today are the same issues of immigration that many Christian and secular Arabs are looking at. I'm not worried about the immigration of Mexicans coming into the United States. I don't think anybody should come into this country illegally. I think people should all come in because every relative I've had that's immigrated has immigrated legally. And I want everybody to come into this country and do it legally too. But I think when you read Donald Trump's writings and his books, and I've read all of them, when you look at what his real position is on immigration, not the position presented by the news media, which again I'm going to argue is the most anti-Arab, racist, political force in the United States. And we shouldn't be allowed to allow the news media to define for us what the issues are. We need to define them. And I think immigration, from his standpoint, is one of taking control of our borders and making sure that the extremists don't come in here and kill us. Because as a Christian Arab, I feel like I'm a target as much as everybody else is, but maybe more so because the extremists in the Middle East hate Christians more than they hate Americans. That's my feeling, and I think that Christian Arabs feel that way.
Yeah, let's not
that's one reason why they voted the way they did.
Let's not reduce what's happening in Syria and Iraq to a Christian-Muslim issue. It's a political issue at its core.
But it's bigger than Syria.
Everyone suffered ISIS, actually. Muslims were their first victims. Entire tribes were killed off, including Sunnis. Anyway, I worry about this black and white view of the world, protecting our borders, keeping extremists out. How many extremists do you think are going to filter on the through the borders? And building walls does not make for good neighbors.
I don't think we know. I really don't think we know, and I think we should have a handle on that. We should know. We should know who comes into this country.
We can look at the facts and analyze in a nuanced way. Now, most of the people who perpetrated horrendous acts here in the States so far, which are dwarfed by the number of, domestic violence and, and killings that have nothing to do with the Middle East or Islam, by the way, are homegrown with their own issues, personal issues. It's very easy to, invoke Islam in this context, but we have to resist that impulse, to be honest with you.
Well, you can't ignore.
We create the impression that Islam, like Flynn is saying right now, that Islam inherently is dangerous, and fear of Islam is rational.
I agree with you. I don't think Islam is dangerous. I think we've allowed it to be presented that way.
We have to make that clear. You make that clear by telling Trump that the world is not black and white.
I think people want to make Trump feel like he's anti-Muslim, but I don't believe he is. And I think the media is directing us that way. And as for Muslim refugees, creating acts of terrorism, how can you argue that it doesn't happen when just a little, while ago we've seen, people do this.
I have to tell you, I'm surprised. How can you overlook a pronouncement to the effect that we have to stop immigration from Muslim countries outright, completely, forthwith? He himself actually backed away from that really insane and very dangerous posture.
Yes, and that's because you asked me how can I do that. I'll tell you why. And it's not a system that I created, but that's the American political system. Rhetoric is always worse than during an election campaign than it is when people are in office.
Well,
I've covered politicians for 40 years. I'm not defending it. I'm just saying that we need to recognize that campaign rhetoric and political rhetoric can be changed and easily and can be influenced. And that's why I believe people like you and others, myself, we need to approach President Trump and talk to him, not as foes and protesters, but as a influential group of people to get him to change his mind and to focus back on what he defined in his own words, what he wanted to do with immigration before this election came up.
Well, you have to get past his security advisors now, and national security advisors, and the layers he's surrounding himself with, which will decide his course of action.
Yeah,
So
but it was the same layers we faced with Obama. We had the same layers with Obama at the United Nations, in the Justice Department, even though Eric Holder seemed like a good person. Just because he comes to our events doesn't mean he's done anything to stand up for our rights.
That I agree with you. I think we are using those galas. We turned ourselves into trope, for diversity to satisfy somebody's whims, and they can say, "Hey, some of my best friends are Arabs." Yes, we've done that. I agree with you that we have not been able, and this is our weakness. We are unable to articulate our expectations, let's say, if not demands even, in terms of broad foreign policy or even domestic policy. And frankly, there is a huge disconnect between involvement in local politics and projecting a unified stance on national stage, which got a lot murkier after the Syrian war. So we have yet another issue to discuss here, this dichotomy creeping in, and coupled by serious lack of leadership into life in Dearborn, which is becoming very polarized now. We have a lot of issues to work through, but Trump has said enough things to give us pause, at least.
I agree with many of the points you make, and I'm glad we actually had this opportunity to talk, because I think there is a middle ground between what we normally do in the Arab community, which is to look at these issues and focus on one person and base a whole campaign of protest really around that. But I think we need to step back, and I think we need to, just as you say, we need to get involved in the political system, and we need to recognize that some of these people that say they are our friends are not really our friends. We need to recognize where the minefields are, and I don't think we do that well in this country, and it's our fault. We're in this argument and discussion mainly because I think our community has failed. and we're being driven by other issues that seem to touch us. But in reality, when this debate over the wall and immigration is done, Mexican Americans might be happy, Asian Americans might be happy, but I can promise you that Arab Americans will be abandoned, will be ignored, because we haven't recognized that it's on our shoulders to make the difference.
All right, Dr. Gawad dropped out, so we're going to take a quick break and get back.
At Metro Detroit Endocrinology, we have specialized physicians using state-of-the-art medical devices for diabetes, thyroid disorders, and weight management. Call for an appointment at 313-914-5580 or come in and visit us at our new location at 5250 Auto Club Drive in Dearborn. Every member of our staff is determined to ensure the best of care for each and every patient. We offer many services including bone density testing, thyroid ultrasound biopsy, simulation testing, and diabetic pump training on site. Our physicians will diagnose and treat hormone imbalances and problems by helping to restore the normal balance of hormones in the body. We'll find the best solutions for your individual needs, and the schedule is never too busy to give you the personal care you deserve. For an appointment or for more information, please call us at 313-914-5580 or visit Metro Detroit Endocrinology at our new location at 5250 Auto Club Drive in Dearborn.
When you're looking for the best in optical care, Dr. Imad Nakash is your doctor to see. With years of experience and thousands of successful procedures performed, you can trust your eyes to Dr. Imad Nakash. See Dr. Imad Nakash and his professional staff for your eye care needs. There's 2 locations to serve you. In Hazel Park, call 248-336-3937. 248-336-3937. In Rochester Hills, call 248-299-3937. That's 248-299-3937.
أحمد إبراهيم من سوبر ماركت زمزم المطعم. عندنا أكلات كتير عراقية ومصرية ولبنانية زي جلابة وتشيكن طاووق وكباب ومسقعة، وأحيانا بنعمل الملوخية والكشري وفراخ مشوية، وكل اللي انتوا عايزينه موجود عندنا. اتفضلوا زورونا في محلات زمزم.
أحييكم من أسواق زمزم، ويوجد عندنا تخفيضات كثيرة على الأسواق وعلى الجروسري وعلى الخضار وعلى اللحوم. عندنا لحوم حلال والمطعم كله لحوم حلال كمان. وأتمنى لكم السلامة والدوام، وزورونا دايما هتلاقوا تخفيضات كثيرة وكبيرة وتجدوا كل ما يسركم.
استوديو زياد بإدارة حسن حامد في ستورمينغ هايتس يحييكم ويقدم لكم خدماته بالصوت والصورة، تسجيل، تصوير، مونتاج، فيديو كليب، إعلانات، كوميرشالز، دوكيومنتري، أفلام وثائقية للترويج لبضائعكم ومحلاتكم وشركاتكم، برامج تلفزيونية وإذاعية. استوديو زياد وبتقنية عالية بإدارة حسن حامد 313-945-8860 313-945-8860 أو 248-761-5787. استوديو زياد، الصوت والصورة اختصاصنا.
قشات ميديترينيان ماركت بإدارة سهر قشات وأولاده يرحبون بالجالية العربية والكلدانية. جميع أنواع المواد الغذائية، البان طازجة، الكرزات والبهارات الطازجة. داخل الأسواق مطعم ميديترينيان شيش كباب يقدم يوميا جميع أنواع الكباب، المقبلات العربية العراقية وصواني الكامبو المميزة. تفتح الأسواق من 8 إلى 9 مساء من الاثنين وحتى السبت، ومن 8 صباحا إلى 9 مساء يوم الأحد. تقع الأسواق على 32839 نورث ويسترن هايوي في مدينة فارمينغتون هيلز. لحوم حلال للجالية الإسلامية. لطلباتكم من المطعم كول 248-538-7855. That is 248-538-7855. قشات ميديترينيان ماركت، خدمة متميزة ومعاملة راقية.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us here at U.S. Arab Radio. I'm Ray Hanania. Dr. Gawad was co-hosting there for a while. He had to get off the radio show for personal reasons, but we have Dr. Hani Bawardi, who is a former associate professor at the University of Michigan, who really, I thought, Hani, you brought up some really important points. Pardon me?
I'm not former. I'm still there.
Oh, you know, I'm looking at your Facebook page. It says former associate professor.
I don't know why you would say that. Sorry about this.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I apologize. I'm just reading it off of here, I wanted to be accurate, so we're friends on Facebook. But Annie, we have like 2 minutes left. What can you give us like a 1 minute conclusion? Do you think in terms of what needs to be done? And I know it's tough to address these issues the way we're forced to do it. We don't have that big of a media, in the Arab community where we can really get into detail. But in a minute or less, what do you think the Arab community should be doing?
Well, what you're doing, Ray, is reaching out to as many people as possible with as much accuracy as possible. We cannot stop forging alliances with people who are in the same predicament or natural allies. We are part and parcel of U.S. society, and we have to remind the general population of this country that we are in the same boat as everyone else, and what's bad for Arab Americans is bad for Americans in general. What's good for them is good for America because they contribute and they're part of the extended communities. We need a self-assessment, frankly, more than anything else. Arab Americans need to know their own history. We have a distinguished, long history with political involvement. That's nuanced. We have a huge history in terms of literature and arts. We know only a glimpse of it, frankly, even with all the scholarship that has been presented since 1967 with the Association of Arab American University Graduates and the Rise of Arab American Studies, which is now tapering off. By the time we did these things, began to express who we are, we've been in the country for about 75, 85 years, and we were busy during those years. There was a time when we spoke in one voice.
Yeah.
We can draw a lot of...
I do remember that. Unfortunately, we got less than a minute left. Is there a website where people can go to get more information on your writings and your books, Hani?
Not a website per se, but I do have a book out. It's called The Making of Arab Americans from Syrian Nationalism to U.S. Citizenship. It's basically a story of how we became true blue U.S. citizens and the tribulations and when and how. It goes against the current in the scholarship, which is frankly is becoming a little bit stagnant. We have a huge wealth of archival information that needs to be tapped, and the book actually delves into that. In addition, there's a few articles in peer-reviewed journal articles.
All right, thank you. Hani, thank you so much for joining. I know this is a heated way to actually have a conversation, but I really appreciated the points that you made, and I think they're so important. Everybody out there at U.S. Arab Radio, we want to thank Layla Al-Husseini. I'm Ray Hanania. Remember, I write for the Arab News at arabnews.com and my own website at thearabdailynews.com. And remember that U.S. Arab Radio is broadcast Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time every day, Monday through Friday, right here at WNZK 690 AM Radio.